Scandal in Washington. On one side, accusations of collusion between Trump and Russia. On the other, claims that innocent Trump campaign operatives were drawn into an FBI trap to trigger an unfounded investigation. But if you think you've got a handle on all the scandals pervading the D.C. swamp, think again. There was another truly scandalous turn of events involving Congress that flew mostly under the radar in the heat of the 2016 presidential campaign. And it's like something out of a spy novel. An unvetted Pakistani national given to blackmail gained access to the computer files of more than 30 Democrats in the House of Representatives. And we'll bring in the author of a new book on this scandal to complete the narrative. Luke Rosiak is an investigative reporter at the Daily Caller and author of Obstruction of Justice: How the Deep State Risked National Security to Protect the Democrats. And he joins us now. Mr. Rosiak, welcome to Liberty Nation Radio.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. If you would pick up the story of Imran Awan from where I just left off, and tell us why many are calling this the biggest scandal in the history of Congress.
That was a great intro. This guy is an IT guy for Congress for many years. He was working for Debbie Wasserman Schultz and other members of Congress. And in the heat of the 2016 election, actually the same week that the DNC was hacked, Congress's own internal police caught him hacking Congress. And so although he was the IT guy, he was taking data, much more data than he should have had access to, impersonating members of Congress and logging into their accounts and so on, and funneling data off the House network and taking steps to hide what he was doing. So obviously, especially with the context of what was going on in the DNC, this was a huge deal. And yet, no one ever heard about it for months and months and months. And even after that, you never heard anything about it. So it turned out, after I pulled the thread on this for 2 years and found everywhere I looked, literally just James Bond stuff, just the absolute most wildest things. This guy was taking money from an Iranian government minister and laundering it through a French company called CIA LLC. After he was banned from Congress, he had a backdoor into the House network because he was impersonating an intelligence staffer. And the list goes on and on. And so they kicked the can down the road until after the election. And they let him continue to log in Congress this whole time while they're building this Russia narrative. And after the election, they still don't want this to really go public. So they kick him off the network and they fire him, but they don't arrest him. And that's when I find out that he's still got access. He goes into Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office at midnight, takes her laptop after he's been banned from Congress, and leaves it in a phone booth. So as I said, truly this is a surreal tale, and it's as I investigated it, I just couldn't believe what I was learning, and yet the American public, this was concealed from.
Did Mr. Awan have so much on so many Democrats that there was a great hesitancy to really bring down the full weight of the law on him?
I think actually that's what he himself said. So a couple of reasons why they wanted this to go away. The first is the Russian narrative. They didn't want this competing hack involving Pakistanis that they had failed to vet. And there were a series of very embarrassing missteps by the Democrats that allowed this to happen, and incompetence. And then the other thing is what you just said. I mean, this guy had access to everything, and I think there was the worry that he would release it if they didn't kind of make this thing go away. And so his own wife goes to the FBI and says, "My husband told me that he's a mole in Congress from Pakistan. He told me that he knows so much that he can never be prosecuted, so it's okay." And then she says, "I'm going to go to the FBI." And he goes, "Well, I've been surveilling you. I've got videotape of a sex tape, and I'm going to release that in Pakistan if you come forward." So here we are. This is a guy hacking Congress, and he's caught, and he starts blackmailing people to prevent them from going to the FBI. His stepmother comes forward, and it's virtually the identical story. She says, I've been held in captivity by this guy to prevent me from coming forward. He said he's going to have my family killed in Pakistan. And they basically intimidate this woman. And, witnesses are scared. Evidence starts disappearing. And really this remarkable cover-up is in full swing.
Our guest is Luke Rosiak, author of Obstruction of Justice, How the Deep State Risked National Security to Protect the Democrats. Now, this scandal went, as you've said, relatively unnoticed because it came to a head in the heat of the 2016 presidential campaign. Do you think it would have been in the headlines and stayed there for some time if it happened at another time? Or would it have been written off like all the revelations about the FBI's covert investigation of Trump, which we now know began before the presidential election?
That's an interesting question because the media is a big part of this story, isn't it? I mean, and what I basically learned through the reporting of this is I approached it first as what I just said, this remarkable national security story that I thought surely everyone would be interested in. I'd have the Washington Post, right behind me, following my leads. And soon I saw that no one was looking. And I would write these stories, and I would say, look at the court documents from civil court, look at these government records, these photographs, all this proof and all this evidence. And there was, basically just a campaign of concealment, and the media gladly went along with it. And they kind of bought the idea of fake news. You can just kind of say that now whenever it's convenient. Politicians can get away with a lot by just saying, it's fake news. And they do that on both sides, of course. And then the other thing is really just the lack of investigative reporting, especially when it's not something that a lot of the media is interested in. And it just turned out that, as you said, there was a much bigger appetite for this Russia story that is really kind of running on fumes here. No one can tell us exactly who with the Trump campaign did what with Russia, but the media is very, very interested. Meanwhile, we've got direct evidence, and this is, investigators on Capitol Hill. The Capitol Police wrote a memo saying that after they caught this guy hacking Congress and actually hacking a particular server called the House Democratic Caucus server, the Capitol Police wrote a memo saying that server disappeared. It's like, holy cow, a server, an important Democratic server, disappeared while it's evidence in a hacking probe. This is huge stuff. It's documented by government investigators, and the media had no appetite in it. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, the Democrats kind of work the FBI, and the FBI goes along with making this thing go away despite all the evidence. And then the media says, no need to look into this. The FBI says there's nothing there. And so my book documents, and the readers can see for themselves and judge for themselves, what happened on Capitol Hill with this Pakistani hack and the frightening ties to foreign governments and the track record of blackmail, and then the FBI basically conspiring to rig a political case. And so most people, as you say, they haven't even heard of this Imran Awan case, and it's a fascinating read in my opinion. But the other thing that's really important for people to learn from it is it shows you how they work behind the scenes to manipulate what we hear about and manipulate the system of justice here in America.
What conclusions have you personally drawn from your extensive research about the pervasiveness or lack thereof of official corruption in Washington?
I'm shocked by how corrupt Congress is. And I've been an investigative reporter here in Washington for a decade, and I've seen a lot, but the cynicism on Capitol Hill and the willingness to put personal reputation above all else. And, this may not sound, maybe everyone's saying, yes, we already know that, but this particular case, it kind of underscored, I saw things with my own eyes that were shocking.
Mr. Rosiak, many thanks for joining us today, and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.
Luke Rosiak, author of Obstruction of Justice, How the Deep State Risked National Security to Protect the Democrats. Quick break, and then we're back with Talkin' Liberty.